In the bone-shattering freeze of Yakutia, where breath turns to ice before it hits the ground, 75-year-old Agatha made a choice that defied all logic. Staring down into a frozen abyss, she didn't see a monster. She saw a dying child. But in the tundra, mercy has a deadly price, and saving a snow leopard cub was about to unleash a storm of teeth, claws, and freezing vengeance. The cold in Oymyakon does not simply chill you, it hunts you. It seeks the gaps in your scarf, the stitching in your boots, and the moisture in your lungs. For Agatha, living alone in a timber cabin 20 miles from the nearest paved road, the temperature was just another neighbor she had learned to tolerate, like the silence that stretched across the Sakha Republic for endless miles. It was mid-January, and the thermometer nailed to the side of Agatha's porch read -52 degrees Celsius. At 75, Agatha was a woman carved from the very larch wood that fueled her stove. Her hands were knobby and scarred from decades of skinning hairs and chopping wood. Her face a map of deep fissures, earned under the relentless Siberian sun and the biting wind. She had lived here since her husband, Arthur, passed away 12 years ago. They had come for the mining boom in the 70s and never left. Now, she was the sole keeper of the last post, as Arthur used to call their homestead. Just to the ridge and back, Agatha muttered to herself, her voice muffled by 3 layers of wool. She adjusted the rifle slung over her shoulder, an old bolt-action Remington that had seen better days but still fired true. She wasn't hunting. She was checking the perimeter fences. The wolves had been bold lately, emboldened by a harsh winter that had thinned the reindeer herds. The snow was waist-deep, but Agatha moved with a rhythmic shuffle on her wide, wooden skis. The only sound was the swish-crunch of her skis and the pounding of her own heart. She reached the northern ridge, a jagged spine of rock usually hidden by snowdrifts. Today, the wind had scoured it clean, exposing the black stone like a wound. She stopped to catch her breath, leaning on her ski pole. That was when she heard it. It wasn't the howl of a wolf or the bark of a fox. It was a high-pitched, mewling sound, a sound of pure, distilled distress. It was a sound no creature makes unless it is dying. Agatha stiffened. In the taiga, curiosity killed more people than hypothermia. If there was a wounded animal, a predator was likely nearby. She scanned the tree line, nothing but white shadows and black trunks. The sound came again, weaker this time, carried on a gust of wind from the direction of the devil's throat. She should turn back. Her tea was waiting. The fire needed stoking. But the cry pierced through her pragmatism, striking a chord of maternal instinct she thought had withered years ago. "Damn fool!" she cursed herself, turning her skis toward the ravine. It took her 20 minutes to navigate the treacherous slope. The ground here was uneven, riddled with pockets of air beneath the snow. As she neared a depression in the earth, the mewling became a desperate rasp. Agatha unslung her rifle, thumbing the safety off. She approached the edge of a sinkhole, a collapse in the permafrost, about 12 feet deep and sheer-sided. She peered over the rim, squinting against the glare. At the bottom, curled into a ball of grey and white misery, was a snow leopard cub. It couldn't have been more than 4 months old. It was scrabbling uselessly against the ice-glazed walls of the pit. Its rear leg dragged at an awkward angle, broken, likely from the fall, the legendary ghost of the mountains. To see one was a miracle. To see one trapped was a tragedy. Agatha stared. Snow leopards were critically endangered. They were also killers. But looking at the small, spotting thing shivering violently, its blue eyes clouded with panic, she didn't feel fear. She felt a heavy, crushing responsibility. She looked up at the sky. The sun was dipping. Darkness would bring the temperature down to -60 degrees Celsius. The cub would be a frozen statue by morning. "Where is your mother?" Agatha whispered, scanning the ridge lines. Snow leopards are fiercely protective. If the mother was alive, she would be near. But the snow around the pit was smooth, save for the skid marks where the cub had fallen. No adult tracks. The mother was gone. Poachers. Or perhaps caught in a landslide. Agatha looked back down. The cub stopped moving, its head drooping onto its paws. It was giving up. Agatha made her choice. She couldn't walk away. She dropped her skis, uncoiled the heavy hemp rope she always carried for dragging timber, and looked for an anchor point. There was a sturdy, dead larch tree about 10 feet from the edge. She tied the rope, testing it with her full weight. It held. "All right," she grunted, pain flaring in her arthritic knees. She couldn't just lower a loop. The cub wouldn't understand. She had to go down. She wrapped the rope around her waist, donned her heavy leather gloves, and began to rappel. The descent was a nightmare. Agatha's boots scrabbled for purchase on the icy walls of the sinkhole. Every jerk of the rope sent a shockwave of agony through her lower back. Her breath came in ragged gasps, freezing instantly on her woolen face mask, turning the fabric into a suffocating sheet of ice. Halfway down, her foot slipped. She plummeted 3 feet before the rope snapped taut, slamming her ribs into the rock wall. A sharp crack echoed in the pit. Agatha cried out, dangling like a spider. Black spots dancing in her vision. She waited for the pain to subside, biting her lip until she tasted copper. Broken rib? Bruised? It didn't matter. She couldn't climb back up without finishing this. She lowered herself the last few feet, her boots crunching onto the debris at the bottom. The pit was a refrigerator. The cold here was still and heavy. The cub, now only 5 feet away, hissed a low, guttural sound that seemed too big for its small body. It bared tiny, needle-sharp teeth, pressing itself against the dirty snow. "Easy," Agatha wheezed, holding one hand up, palm out. "I'm not the Reaper yet." She moved slowly. The cub lashed out, a claw snagging the thick wool of her trousers. Agatha didn't flinch. She knew animals. Fear smelled different than aggression, and this animal reeked of terror. She reached into her coat pocket and pulled out a strip of dried venison jerky. She tossed it. The meat landed near the cub's nose. It sniffed, then devoured it in a single gulp. "That's it," she soothed. She needed to secure it. If she tried to carry it, it would shred her face. She took off her heavy outer coat, a massive sheepskin parka. The cold instantly bit through her sweater, gnawing at her skin. But she needed the coat as a blanket. With a speed that belied her age, Agatha lunged. She threw the heavy coat over the cub. The animal exploded into a frenzy of motion, snarling and thrashing. Agatha threw her body weight onto the bundle, pinning it to the ground. She took a hit to her forearm, a deep scratch through the wool sweater, but she held on. "Stop it!" she commanded, her voice cracking. The cub, weakened by hours in the pit and the cold, eventually went limp. She used a spare length of paracord to wrap the coat securely around the animal, turning it into a squirming, furry burrito. Only its head was exposed, eyes wide and blue, staring at her with profound confusion. Now came the impossible part. The ascent. Agatha looked up. The circle of sky seemed miles away. She couldn't climb the rope with the cub in her arms. She wasn't strong enough. She tied the end of the rope around the bundled cub. "I'm going up first," she told it. "Then I pull you up. Don't go anywhere." The climb out took everything Agatha had left. She had to haul her own weight up 12 feet of ice, using knots in the rope and tiny crevices for her fingers. Her ribs screamed with every pull, her heart hammered against her chest like a trapped bird. When she finally flopped over the rim of the pit, she lay in the snow for a full minute, unable to move. The sky was turning a bruised purple. Twilight was here. She forced herself up. She grabbed the rope and began to haul. The cub was heavy, maybe 40 pounds of dead weight. Agatha braced her feet against the larch tree, heaving, grunting, her muscles trembling violently. Inch by inch, the bundle appeared. When she finally dragged the cub over the lip of the pit, Agatha collapsed again. She didn't have time to rest. The temperature was plummeting. She checked the cub. It was shivering violently now, hypothermia setting in. She retied the bundle to her back, using the rope as a makeshift harness. It was an agonizing burden. She stepped back into her skis. The journey back to the cabin was a blur of pain and white noise. The wind had picked up, erasing her tracks from earlier. Agatha navigated by memory and the shape of the ridgeline. The cub on her back was a heater of sorts, its body warmth seeping through her sweater, but the extra weight made her skis sink deeper, requiring double the effort to move. She was a mile from the cabin when the hair on the back of her neck stood up. It wasn't the cold. It was a sensation she had felt only once before. Years ago, when a bear had stalked her husband. A feeling of being watched. Agatha stopped. She scanned the tree line behind her. Through the falling snow, about 200 yards back, a shadow detached itself from the gloom. It was massive. Agatha's blood ran cold. The mother. She hadn't been dead. She had been hunting, or perhaps she had been watching from the cliffs. Too afraid of the human scent to approach the pit until the cub was out. Now, she saw a thief stealing her child. The massive leopard paused, its tail twitching. It let out a roar, not a scream, but a deep, coughing saw sound that vibrated in Agatha's chest. Agatha didn't wait. She pushed forward, her poles digging frantically into the snow. She couldn't outrun a snow leopard. Her only hope was the cabin. "Come on, old girl," she hissed through gritted teeth. "Move." The shadow behind her broke into a run. Agatha didn't look back. She focused on the chimney smoke rising in the distance. The sanctuary. The sanctuary was close. She could hear the crunch of snow behind her now. Heavy paws. She crested the final rise. The cabin was there, 50 yards away. She practically fell down the slope, skiing recklessly fast. She crashed into the woodpile near the porch, the impact knocking the wind out of her. The roar came again, loud and terrifyingly close. Agatha scrambled on hands and knees, dragging the bundled cub. She clawed her way up the porch steps. She fumbled for the door latch. Her fingers were frozen claws, unresponsive. Thump. Something heavy hit the snow at the bottom of the porch stairs. Agatha threw the latch open and fell inside, dragging the cub with her. She kicked the heavy timber door shut and slammed the iron bolt home, just as a massive weight slammed against the wood from the outside. The entire cabin shuddered. Agatha lay on the floor in the dark, gasping, clutching the bundled cub to her chest. Outside, the scratching started. Long, deep gouges being torn into the door. She was safe from the cold. But the monster was on her doorstep, and it wanted its baby back. The heavy bolt of the cabin door rattled in its frame as another blow struck the timber. It sounded like a sledgehammer. Agatha backed away, her chest heaving, the bundle of fur still clutched in her arms. "I'm not hurting him," she screamed at the door, though she knew the beast outside understood only the scent of her stolen child. The cabin, built by her late husband Arthur 40 years ago, was solid larch, but it had never been tested by a 200-pound killing machine fueled by maternal rage. Outside, the wind howled, mixing with the frustrated, soaring roars of the mother leopard. Agatha hurried to the hearth, placing the cub on the rug before the wood stove. The fire was dying, and the room was cooling rapidly. She shoved 3 logs into the belly of the stove, stoking it until the iron ticked with heat. The cub was awake now. The warmth had revived it, but with consciousness came pain. It tried to stand, only to collapse with a sharp squeal. Outside, the roaring stopped abruptly. The silence was worse. Agatha knew predators. Silence meant strategy. She grabbed her rifle and checked the window shutters. They were bolted shut, but the wood was old. She could hear the heavy crunch of paws on the snow, circling the cabin. Crunch, crunch, crunch. The mother was looking for a way in. Agatha turned her attention to the cub. She needed to work fast. She boiled water on the stove and retrieved her medical kit, a battered tin box containing rubbing alcohol, bandages, and morphine tablets left over from Arthur's final days. "This is going to hurt," she whispered. She knelt beside the cub. It hissed, its ears flattened, but it was too weak to fight. Agatha examined the leg. It was a clean break. Thank God, not a compound fracture. But the swelling was bad. She broke a leg off an old milking stool to use as a splint. She crushed half a morphine pill into a paste with a drop of water and rubbed it on the cub's gums. "That's a good boy," she murmured, her hands moving with practiced efficiency. The cub let out a high-pitched scream that tore through the cabin. Instantly, the cabin roof shook. Thump! Dust and soot rained down from the ceiling boards. The mother had jumped onto the roof. Agatha looked up, paralyzed. The chimney. It was a wide stone chimney, wide enough for a determined predator to squeeze halfway down, or at least tear at the flashing to get into the attic. The scratching started above their heads, frantic, tearing sounds of claws ripping at shingles. Agatha grabbed the rifle and aimed it at the ceiling, her hands trembling. She couldn't shoot. If she fired through the roof, she might just wound it, making it even more dangerous. And if she killed the mother, the cub on the rug would be an orphan. She would be saving it only to condemn it to a zoo or death. "Get down!" Agatha yelled, stomping her boot on the floorboard. "Get down, you witch!" The scratching ceased. Then, a heavy thud as the leopard jumped back down to the snow. But the siege wasn't over. A crash of glass shattered the stillness. Agatha spun around. The kitchen window. The shutters there were thinner. A massive paw, tipped with obsidian claws, had punched through the wood and the glass pane behind it. The limb was blindly swiping at the interior, knocking over jars of pickled beets and a kerosene lamp. The smell of oil filled the room. No! Agatha rushed forward, grabbing a heavy cast-iron skillet from the drying rack. She didn't want to hurt the mother, but she couldn't let her in. The leopard was in a frenzy. If she breached the cabin, she would kill Agatha and likely trample the cub in the chaos. Agatha slammed the skillet against the intruding paw. The leopard roared in pain and retracted the limb instantly. Agatha shoved the kitchen table against the window, bracing it with a chair. She retreated to the center of the room. Panting, she was trapped. It was negative 55 degrees Celsius outside. If the leopard broke a window fully, the cold alone would kill them both before morning. She looked at the cub. It was sleeping now, the drug and the warmth taking over. It looked like a harmless house cat, save for the massive paws. Agatha sat in her rocking chair, the rifle across her lap, watching the door. Every hour, the mother would return, scratching at the door, testing the windows, crying out a mournful, haunting sound that echoed the wind. It was a long, dark night of the soul. Agatha thought of Arthur. She thought of the isolation. She realized that she and the leopard were not so different, two old souls in the frozen waste, fighting for the only thing that mattered, life. "I'll give him back," Agatha whispered to the walls. "Just let us live to see the sun." Dawn in Yakutia arrives not as a burst of light, but as a slow, grey bruise on the horizon. Agatha had been awake for 20 hours. Her body ached as if she had been beaten, and the cold had begun to seep through the floorboards despite the fire. The scratching had stopped 3 hours ago. Agatha stood up, her joints popping. She moved to the peephole in the front door, a small hole drilled through the timber, plugged with a rag. She pulled the rag out and peered through. The world was white and still. The storm had passed, and there she was. The mother leopard was lying on the porch, curled tight against the door. She was covered in a layer of frost, her spotted coat blending perfectly with the dirty snow. She wasn't dead. Agatha could see the slow rise and fall of her flank. She was waiting. Agatha looked back at the cub. It was awake, limping on 3 legs, sniffing at the door. It smelled its mother. "Okay," Agatha said, her voice steady. "It's time." She couldn't just open the door. The mother might attack out of reflex. Agatha needed a barrier. She went to the pantry and grabbed a slab of raw meat, a thawing haunch of reindeer. She then tied a rope to the handle of the front door. She would have to do this from a distance. She retreated to the back of the cabin, behind the heavy oak kitchen table she had overturned earlier. She held the rope in one hand and the rifle in the other, though she had engaged the safety. "Go on," she nudged the cub gently. The cub hobbled to the door and let out a small mew. On the other side of the wood, the mother's head snapped up. Agatha saw the shadow move through the crack under the door. The mother let out a low rumble. Agatha took a deep breath. "Trust," she whispered. She pulled the rope. The latch clicked. The door creaked open inches, caught by the wind. For a second, nothing happened. Then, a massive paw pushed the door wide open. The cold air rushed in like a physical blow, swirling with snow. In the doorway, framed by the white desolation of the tundra, stood the queen of the taiga. She was magnificent. Muscles rippled under her thick coat. Her eyes were green fire, scanning the room instantly. She spotted Agatha behind the table, and her lip curled, baring yellow fangs. Agatha froze. She lowered her eyes, a sign of submission. She didn't raise the rifle. The mother leopard shifted her gaze to the floor. The reunion was not gentle. The mother lunged forward, sniffing the cub violently, licking the splintered leg, knocking the little one over with the force of her grooming. She checked him for injuries, her purr sounding like a diesel engine idling in the room. She nudged the cub toward the door. The cub hesitated, looking back at Agatha. The mother stopped. She turned her massive head toward the old woman. For a heartbeat, the predator and the savior locked eyes. There was no gratitude in that gaze. Nature is too cruel for gratitude, but there was recognition, an acknowledgement of a debt. The tension in the room broke. The mother chuffed a soft, breathy sound and grabbed the cub by the scruff of its neck, despite its size. She turned and dragged him out onto the porch, into the snow. Agatha rushed to the door to close it against the cold. She watched them go. The mother stopped at the tree line. She looked back one last time, her silhouette stark against the rising sun. Agatha didn't tell anyone for weeks. Who would believe her? But the story doesn't end there. Spring arrives late in Oymyakon, usually in May. 3 months later, Agatha stepped onto her porch to check her vegetable store. Lying on the top step, neatly placed in the center of the welcome mat, was a young mountain goat. It was freshly killed, its neck broken cleanly. There were no tracks, the snow had melted into mud, but Agatha knew. It wasn't a kill left by a wolf. Wolves eat where they kill. This was a delivery. Agatha looked up toward the jagged peaks of the ridge. She couldn't see them, but she knew they were there. The ghost and her child. She smiled, her face cracking into a web of wrinkles. "Thank you," she whispered to the wind. "We're even." Agatha's story is a chilling reminder that in the wildest corners of the earth, the line between predator and neighbor is razor thin. She didn't just save a cub. She earned the respect of a monster, proving that compassion speaks a language older than words. If this story froze your blood and warmed your heart, please like this video and subscribe to the channel. Share this with someone who respects the power of nature. See you in the next true story.